guys! Here we are with the first of several Facebook live shows where we are going to introduce you to our amazing speakers and workshop leaders that will be with us at the festival this fall, Slow Business Adventure. My name is Torill and I'm here with Heather Thorkelson. She is from Canada and now she lives in Sweden. And she runs 2 companies, and today we will get to know her a bit better. So I'm so glad to have you with me, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
And you are based in Sweden, where you run 2 different companies. So you taught me a new word, being a dual business owner. And these 2 companies are quite different, but somehow they relate to being adventurous, both of them. Can you tell us a bit about those 2 companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out in 2011 with my own sort of solo business. I initially started as a life coach. I got certified as a life coach because I thought, well, if I'm going to work for myself for the foreseeable future, I should have some good people skills. But the life coaching practice very quickly turned into teaching people about how to create location-independent businesses. And then that continued to morph into essentially what it's evolved into today, which is business consulting and strategy. So that was from 2011. That's been sort of my bread and butter all along. And then in 2015, after having met my husband, who is Swedish, and that's why I'm now in Sweden, I met him in Antarctica, of all places, and he's a polar expedition leader, and so I saw a business opportunity when I met him, and it seemed too good to pass up, and I said to him, I think we should create a business around you and his twin brother, who's also a polar expedition leader. I thought, this is amazing branding. It's a no-brainer. We're going to do this. And so they said yes, and I took it and ran with it. So then we created a polar expedition company, and essentially I've been running the 2 ever since.
That's so cool. And how is it being an expert on business development, branding and all that good stuff that comes with creating your own livelihood when you are together with Swedish people who, like Norwegians, are not like ready to stand out and really take your place.
Yeah,
we're kind of shy. Most of
us.
Well,
as you know, there's this sort of tall poppy syndrome for everybody. Anyone who's not from this area, you don't want to stand out. It's not okay. Everyone should just kind of try to be similar and don't brag. Bragging is so not okay in Scandinavia. Not that anyone in Canada, where I'm from, loves it, but there's definitely a cultural thing here. So it is a challenge because I created a company around the image of my husband and his twin brother. It's called Twin Tracks Expeditions. And the reason is because everybody knew who they were. Like, not in Sweden per se, but in the polar regions. Everybody, Rickard and David, the Swedish twins, They're tall, they've got big red beards. They're like, it's beautiful for branding. But yeah, they do not like getting their pictures taken. They don't like me trying to get them any kind of press. So it's a challenge for sure. We've worked around it, and they're starting to slowly come around to the fact that it's a huge advantage to be recognizable, and that it doesn't mean that you're better than anyone. It just means that you're showing up at the table,
Yeah, people can remember you.
People can remember you, yeah, and that's a good thing. We're not trying to do anything bad here. We're trying to take people on transformational travel voyages. It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. So you found this Swedish Vikings, and you created this adventure company around it, and you also have your business strategy company. Mm-hmm. So how do you even combine the 2?
Oh, well, I do and I don't. I mean, they're really 2 separate entities, right? Because the business consulting is entirely digital. It's location independent. I started it in Toronto. I moved to Peru. I lived in Peru for 2.5 years and ran it from there. Then I was sort of living out of my suitcase for a couple of years after I met my husband, but I couldn't legally move to Sweden. And now I'm in Sweden. And so it's something that luckily, I mean, this is one of the things that's the magic of the internet. I've been able to literally carry my livelihood with me on my back anywhere, which is amazing. And then be able to build things on the side. So I have this one entirely flexible, digital, amazing international thing that I do. And then this other one, which is in many ways digital because it's run from my laptop and the laptops of people that I work with. And I have 2 contractors that help me run Twin Tracks, but they don't live anywhere near me. One of them is from Australia. The other one is from Canada. And so we kind of run the company virtually, but the thing that we deliver is an experience, and it involves physical products, right? And also in my digital company and my consulting, there's no real risk, right? Like I don't have to put down a ton of money in order to earn money. I have to invest some things because I need to find ways to get my ideas out into the world, whether it's courses or books or whatever, and marketing. But I don't even need to rent an office because I work from home. So there's no real financial risk. Whereas with the expedition company, it's like risk times 100. It's, tens of thousands of euros in deposits that you have to put down, and there's no absolute guarantee that, you're going to get the bookings that you need. And then there's the actual risk to life and limb. I mean, we're going into polar bear country. I hire guides that carry guns and have to have all their licensing and everything. There's personal liability insurance. I mean, again, polar regions. What if one of your guests falls in the water and, it's hypothermic, so many different elements to consider. So because I'm a business consultant, I knew how to very strategically take this new concept of Twin Tracks and grow it fast and grow it quick and grow it lean and focus on a niche. And we have blown up in the time that Twin Tracks has existed. But they're very different businesses, and so they require different things of me. And what I'm trying to do now, as the company has very suddenly grown over the last 2 years, is get more people underneath me so that I can focus on the higher, the bigger picture sort of business development stuff, and then also supporting my clients on the other side with their business development, because that's really what I love the most. I love the bigger picture conceptual stuff.
Yeah, I love that you're running 2 so different businesses. It's not like one business very close to the other, but it's 2 completely different ventures. And I think what you described about the risks and having to invest before you can harvest really resonates with many in this group that have rural tourism businesses and that needs to have a physical building, or they need some equipment and they need some more people that can help them run the business.
Yeah.
You can't really expand the business just with you and then you can employ someone. You actually need to have a team before you can get the single customer, or you need to build something before you have a single customer.
Absolutely. And that's the really tricky part, right? I mean, it's a really tricky thing. And also, I think probably a lot of people who come to the conference will be this type of person that I'm about to describe. When you have an idea or when you want to deliver excellence, it's very hard to delegate any of the pieces to other people because you're worried that they won't understand where you're coming from or they won't understand your vision. When something is so near and dear to your heart, like your own business, or you have, like, let's say you have a farm and you're doing like a B&B type thing, whatever, you want to make sure that every touch point, every person that you bring in to help you has the same orientation towards care and excellence and customer service that you do. And that's really hard as well, So there's a lot of different pieces. And if you're lean on cash flow in the beginning, that's also a challenge, obviously, right? And that's something that we struggled with in Twin Tracks a bit. I was really doing everything for about 1.5 years. And then I was like, okay, now we hire.
Yes, this potato entrepreneur filling all the roles herself for himself.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can use me for anything, and then you actually do everything.
Yeah.
But I think that running these 2 businesses have really set you up to be the best advisor for people that are venturing into entrepreneurship and also wants to grow their business, where it's not only an online business, but where you actually have to do some financial investments and investments with your time. So several of both your and my customers, they spent years planning, preparing, investing, and they also have this great attention to detail that you described. They are really caring about their customers and that everything is impeccable. And
Yep.
how do you delegate that? You need to create a culture in this new company of yours, and you need to give people freedom to execute so that they can do things better than maybe you can, but you also need to be the cultural bearer of the vision, because that's your job as the entrepreneur. So a lot
Yep.
of interesting things that we can discuss further in the campfire conversations and also in your workshop and at other times when people meet you at Slow Business Adventure.
Yeah, there's so much stuff. Actually, I'm really excited to delve into that, and I think it's the right group. Like you're bringing together the kind of people that really get this stuff and that really want to learn best practices from other people who are in similar or adjacent types of businesses.
I'm so glad we have 4 days, because this is the kind of conversations where we actually need some time.
Yeah.
And where we can talk and then we can have some time apart, and then people can find each other again and continue the conversation. But at one point where they get full attention from you is the workshops, and you're actually going to present something where you are now working hard to create a book around a very specific topic, and you're rebranding your Heather Thorkelson consulting business with a new name, and you're going to run a workshop where you take this new idea or concept of yours and you create a workshop for a Slow Business Adventure on that topic. So stage is yours now. You can tell us all about that.
Yeah, so basically I'm making this business, or I'm writing this book called No Plan B. And the idea is, or the idea behind it came from my own experience. When I left the corporate world, I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I couldn't go back to the 9 to 5. I couldn't go back to being an employee. And so in the back of my mind, I always had this concept, people would say, oh, well, what are you going to do if it doesn't work out? Or, of course, a lot of people in Canada were like, oh, you're moving to Peru and you're going to work online? That's nice. Lots of sort of just people didn't believe in me. And I didn't care, because I was like, you know what? There's no plan B. You can laugh at me all you want or assume that it's not going to work out. But there's no other option for me. I need to make this work. And so, after years of this kind of stewing in the back of my brain, and then also working with lots of different clients, and then opening a second business, and all this amazing stuff that you learn about yourself through the process of entrepreneurship, I was like, this has to go in a book. This has to be something that I talk about with people, because it's the thing that people struggle with the most, The people like me, and I mean the people who, they want to stay on the outside. They want to continue to make a living from their ideas and from, thinking outside of the box and from creating new cool experiences for people and whatnot. So the book, No Plan B, is geared towards those people. And rather than trying to tell people how to run a business or serving up strategies and tactics or whatever, I'm not interested in that. That's what the internet's for. We can find all the resources we need to run a business on the internet. What you can't find the resources for necessarily or as easily is those internal processes, right? Your identity as an entrepreneur. How do you step into that space that you need to take up to deliver the amazing ideas that you have to the world, right? And so it's partially just the straight up, I feel confident enough to call myself an entrepreneur now, but it's also the elements of yourself, of your person, that support you being confident in that role. So elements of yourself like decisiveness, like perseverance, like generosity, like curiosity, resilience. There's all these different elements that allow you to move forward and or, as you and I both know very well, not move forward, right? Because if you're not making progress with your ideas or as an entrepreneur, or if you want to just call yourself self-employed or freelancer, that's fine as well. If you're not moving forward, chances are it's not something external, it's something internal. And that's the stuff that I find so interesting, and that is the stuff that we're going to workshop in the No Plan B workshop at the conference.
Yeah, it's so easy to fill your head with good excuses for not doing what you know you have to do. And in my practice, I've also seen people wait for several years before they have started doing something practical and taking action towards starting their business or growing their business or just developing it in the way they want to develop it, just because they need to work on that identity shift first, from being an employee or being someone that tries to start a business and really filling that role of entrepreneur, founder, CEO, and taking that that space. So both the mental shift, but also how you deal with how other people sees you, I think is a big thing for many of us. It's quite hard. I was recently featured in the biggest newspaper in Norway, VG, where I talked about courage and the personal risk you take when you venture into entrepreneurship. And I think that what you are going to teach in the workshop is also really heavily tied into that topic of how do you perceive yourself, and you actually have something to prove when you go from being employed by someone and being an entrepreneur and employing yourself and maybe other people too. So it's so much happening in that space that we need to work on and sort out and get straight in order to be able to implement all the marketing tactics and the strategies for sales and branding and all of that. So it's not just a mindset shift, I think. It's also some really practical strategies that you need to practice.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not enough to hear it one time. You actually need to be in an environment where other people are practicing it as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's a major identity shift, and part of that identity shift is creating new habits, right? Creating new habits of how you show up, creating new thought habits, catching yourself in old ways of thinking. That you need to break that cycle, because the reality is, and this is something that I write about in my book, we have literally from birth been sort of funneled in the direction of being workers, right? We're taught in school how to perform, how to produce, how to follow instructions, how to sit down and focus and keep your eyes on your own paper. And that is like completely the opposite of what it is to be entrepreneurial and creative and develop things out of your ideas. It's completely the opposite. And so, I had this really long process when I left the corporate world of just, trying to unlearn everything that I'd learned, almost trying to unbrainwash myself, because we all go through that. We all question ourselves. We all, it takes all of us a long time to get to the point, I think, where we go, oh yeah, you know what? I'm entrepreneurial. I can actually call myself that. I mean, you've probably had this conversation with clients as well. So many clients who are like, I call myself a freelancer. I wouldn't use the word entrepreneur. Even if you objectively looking at them, you're like, no, you are definitely a full-on entrepreneur. But they can't make that leap, because they haven't gone through that process yet. They haven't shown up, or they haven't proved to themselves, I think, that's a title that they deserve. And so you make the point of, needing to be around people who are similar to you or who are modeling that is super helpful. I remember when I was sort of in my early stages, I would look at people who were kind of on the other side of that gap, those people who were just super confident and they're like, this is what I do and I own businesses and whatever. And I was like, I want that. What is that? But learning from them is really cool, and also the realization that at some point it just clicks. At some point you just go, oh, I'm on the other side now.
I think that often happens when you are in an environment with other entrepreneurs, and maybe you get a bit of pushback from friends or family that are like, what are you doing in your home office? Or why do you have this co-working? I mean, don't spend your money on an office. You can definitely work from home, or why do you have this side hustle thing?
Yeah, they don't understand.
Yeah, and then you find yourself in a conference or like the Slow Business Adventure, and you're surrounded by other people that went through the same thing, and you see that, oh, I'm in this group because I belong here. This feels like home. Great.
Yeah. It's magic, and I think it really speaks to the fact that nobody can do this alone, this journey. Whatever your journey looks like, nobody can do it alone. And part of it is exactly what you just described. Because when you are around people who exist in the ecosystem that you are trying to exist in, and you find those places, those spaces where you feel at home, there is incredible power in that. I mean, you can make light years of progression in your own journey in a matter of 4 days, because you're not surrounded by the naysayers or the people who don't get it and your own self-doubt. You're surrounded by all these things that empower you and all of these people who are making things happen and who are listening to your ideas and going, yeah, that's amazing. Like, do you need some help with that? I mean, I'm getting chills thinking about it because it's few and far between where you can find groups like that. And I've been to other big conferences, like really big conferences in the US and stuff, and there's a mixture of people like that, but not really kind of curated in the same way, And if you can find that group, if you can find a curated group of people who are on the same page, it's incredible. It is really, truly incredible. And it can be a game changer for your business and for yourself as a human being, as an entrepreneur.
Thank you for saying that, because that's why we started this whole adventure, because in societies as a whole, even though we value entrepreneurship more now than we did maybe 10 years ago, and there's a shift definitely with remote working and with entrepreneurship and small scale businesses, so many small business owners, they feel inferior because they just have one employee or it's just them and they're solo entrepreneurs and they're not into this grow your business abroad schemes that you can get venture capital for, or you can get money from a governmental place, or you don't get the same support system when you are small. And we need it as much or even more than the bigger companies with large teams and a lot of external financing. And small companies bootstrap, we use our own credit cards and savings, and we find solutions when we don't have money. We find other ways to do things, and a big part of the resources that we can use to build our business we can find in our networks, and that's why it's so important to build that network also from early on with other like-minded entrepreneurs. And I think that since Slow Business Adventure is a cross of industries, is that a term? A cross of industries? I mean, like from many people from many different backgrounds and industries, then it's so much easier to share your ideas and get input from the other business owners than if you just went to a conference with other writers or other rural entrepreneurs that owns a farm. It's much easier to actually get ideas and bounce ideas of people that are from different fields. But back to the workshop, Heather, because I want you to tell us a bit more about how you work with this identity shift and how we can step into that role of being true entrepreneurs. Yeah,
so I mean, it's a process, right? So it's not necessarily, we're not going to change the world in a workshop, but I want to kind of start that conversation with people around these concepts, around the concepts of the pieces that make you up as a human being that then display themselves in you as an entrepreneur. So the workshop is going to be a lot about delving into that. So let's say entrepreneurial strengths and weaknesses. I really want to kind of get people to go a little bit deeper on where they know their strengths are based on what they've been doing so far in their business. You know, we all know what our strengths are. We also know what energizes us and what really drains us. So you might have a strength, but using that strength drains you a lot, and that kind of thing is also really worth examining. And then what within that landscape of personal attributes, which pieces are either kind of neglected or that you know aren't your strongest points, and look at that. And you know, it's not in any way to shine a light on the things that we don't like about ourselves, but it's more about where do we know we can kind of strengthen a little bit, and also who can help us do that. Because I know exactly where my weaknesses are, and rather than avoid them, which I used to do, I now actively look for people who can either help me or ways that I can build that up, because I want to be better in that, because it will make me be able to better create the change that I want to create. So I see this very much as a sort of like digging around. You know, like I mean, it's fun. It sounds really boring, but I love this stuff. It's fun.
It doesn't sound boring.
I love getting people to do like little icebreaker things and kind of digging around in the areas that we don't normally, because we're so busy thinking about like our next email newsletter or something. You know, we're thinking about the practical elements of business. We're not thinking about that sort of underlaying, you know, the more deeply personal stuff that affects the decisions that we make and also affects where we pay attention. A lot of this more personal stuff is directly informs how and where we procrastinate, which is, you know, can very much affect business. So all of that kind of thing. So it's really going to be a kind of interesting workshop of delving into those bits, sharing funny stories, sharing just really cool bits and pieces that we're discovering about ourselves, and then walking away with a clearer knowledge of who we want to become and where are those areas that we can kind of work on a little bit more. And also thinking quite specifically about what impact that will have on our business. I love, you know, I do come from this life coaching background, and I love to think of that sort of future self. You know, who does the future version of ourselves need us to be in order to do what we need to do, right? And as a bit of a side tangent as well, which is also part of the book, and, you know, I'll bring up in the workshop, I really do believe that entrepreneurship is one of the most powerful vehicles for change. And as an entrepreneur, the way that you show up allows you directly to affect the ecosystem that you exist in. And so how you show up, the way that you show up, whatever your product or service is setting an example for those people around you, right? So if we go back to the part of the conversation where, you know, our friends and family are like, what are you doing? What's this cockamamie idea? Are you going to make money?
The world.
Yeah, you're going to make money on the internet, you know? Yeah, they're all kind of laughing at you. But then like 2 years later, just by being who you are, just by stepping further into your entrepreneurial self, just by bringing your ideas to life, suddenly they're looking at you and going, well, isn't she inspiring? My goodness. You know, and then what does that do for your children or your friends' kids or like the next generation of people, right? Because
don't make me cry.
But it's true. I mean,
it's leading by example.
You don't need to invent the next thing that saves a million lives. You just need to step into the person that you could be, because the ripple effect of that is massive.
We talked a bit about how not having worked on your identity as an entrepreneur and stepping into that role can make you stuck. But can you help us see the symptoms in the everyday life that we can experience? Like in our day-to-day life that will make you go like, you should take this workshop. I mean, how does that look like? Because it's this feeling of overwhelm sometimes, right? Yeah. That, oh, I have so much to do, I don't know what end I should start in, and just the clock ticking, and 2 months went by and I didn't even start writing that book or working on that new product, or I didn't do the selling that I was supposed to do. Like, what kind of symptoms do people experience when they need to work on this?
Yeah, well, that's right there. That's a good example. Things just sort of not like having ideas and having important things on your to-do list that just keep getting pushed back and don't get done. Decisiveness is a big thing. A lot of newer entrepreneurs and even people who've been doing it for a long time have a hard time making decisions about certain elements of their business, so they just kind of go, oh, okay, deal with that later, you know? So feeling indecisive, definitely feeling overwhelmed. And I would say a big one is when you find that you're easily derailed. So if you find that you're easily thrown off for like an entire afternoon because you got hit with comparisonitis. You know, I used to run a course called Kick Comparisonitis back in, 2013. It's been a while. But it was really popular because the comparison issue in entrepreneurship, especially if a component of your work is online, super hard. So it's one thing to feel some comparison. It's another thing when you get derailed by it. And you're like, oh my God, why am I even bothering? You know, everyone else is doing it better than me or whatever. Then they should be in my workshop. And also just being derailed by peer pressure, you know, people who are trying to do something that's outside of the box and their friends and family and community don't understand and they find that really deflating. Come to the workshop because this is all about starting from a place of confidence, starting from a place of being very rooted in who you're meant to be in the world, and then building up the skill set around that to make you basically like a superhuman. Because I think that's so important, right? I mean, we all look at the kinds of people who are not like the annoying egotistical ones, but like those really lovely, amazing, like generous balls of love people who just feel, it seems like they go out into the world and they do the things that they want to do and they find the things that they want to find and they partner with the people they want to partner with. I mean, we all can kind of, you know, think of someone in our sphere that's like that. Well, we can all be like that. You know, we can all be those like love bombs of light that go out and do really cool things and like make these businesses that are so wonderful and that people are really drawn to, you know, but we need to build up our little arsenal of skills so that we feel that energy, you know, and that when we get derailed or we get sidetracked, we can come back to ourselves and then just keep on going. And part of that is having a community of support that feels the same way and that is similarly empowered within themselves.
Now I have like 100 follow-up questions. But I think we'll have to save most of those for September. But I get a sense, Heather, that this is the perfect workshop for people that know that they themselves are quite complex humans, like most of us are. That don't think of entrepreneurship as this straight line going upwards all the time, but that know that they have to work with themselves as the biggest resource in the business, and that knows that the profitability in the business is directly tied to their ability to make good decisions. And when something is stopping us from making good decisions or plowing through overwhelm or generally having that overview and executing on our vision, then we should take your workshop. I think. I'm signing up.
Awesome. Oh, I'm very excited about it. I love this work, and I think that I know for a fact that anyone who is at this conference is going to be a phenomenal person who they're proving it just by having signed up. They're proving it because it shows me that you're already completely investing in yourself, that you believe in a bigger vision for what it is. Even if your bigger vision is owning chickens and like selling their eggs, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be a big vision, just it's your vision, you know, and anyone who's willing to kind of go in that direction, bring it on. Like, I love working with those people, and I think it's really exciting to see what we can make happen.
Yeah, and just the fact that you're writing a book about this and that you've done this work since 2011, was it? And you're bringing so much experience to the people at the workshop and the conference in general. And I think that the name is so genius. It's just speaking to everything in me that feels confident about starting this international festival or running a local co-working space in a place with 3,000 people and like the going against the grain things that we do and that we believe that we can pull off, but that maybe not all other people believe that we can pull off, because that's the entrepreneurial spirit in a nutshell, that we see a possibility that not everyone else has discovered or believe in yet. So we need to do the work and show the world what's possible, and step into that role as entrepreneurs and own that 100%.
Yes, 100%. I'm with you. And yeah, it's going to be a great conference.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you, and thank you for sharing a bit about your work and your two companies. And let's share the links to both of your businesses in the comment thread. And if anyone has any questions about No Plan B or the book, or if you feel that you can identify as an incurable entrepreneur, let us know. Raise a hand, and we'll be happy to continue the conversation in the comments in the group. So thank you so much, Heather, for joining us today, and we really look forward to your workshop and seeing you in the Norwegian mountains this fall.
Thank you so much, Torill. We'll see you in September.